Companies in the UK are finding new and innovative ways of becoming more sustainable, offering solutions unheard of before. In today's programme, Executive TV will speak to some of these companies pioneering change, take a deeper look into their operations and see what challenges they face. Barlows is a leading electrical contractor and maintenance provider that designs, installs and maintains electrical solutions.
Barlows UK was formed 75 years ago. We started in humble beginnings in a small town called Malpas, which is approximately a mile from where we are today. We live in a rural community and we started our business serving the local farmers, doing small electrical jobs. We then went to establish a small electrical shop selling batteries and small lamps. And from there, we evolved to become a relatively large electrical contractor just within our own region in the northwest. Since those days, we've actually grown to now become a multidisciplined national company, employing over 650 employees, with over 450 engineers on the road, all on employed status.
Maccaferri manufactures, designs, supplies and constructs systems for the global construction industry.
It's a company that has a fabulous heritage, really. Back in 1879 was when let's say the Maccaferri that you'd recognise today was founded, and where some of the, let's say, more environmental solutions were developed, although at the time we didn't realise they were environmental solutions, I guess. And that was in Bologna in Italy. And since then, through expansion, it's reached the UK and other areas around the world. So, and the UK operation was founded in 1956. So we've been in this market for quite a while now.
Cadent is the UK's largest gas distribution network, supplying gas to 11 million homes and businesses across the country.
So sustainability for Cadent means keeping people warm while protecting the planet. 3/4 of UK homes are heated by mains gas central heating. We need to continuously look to remove waste, improve efficiencies while reducing leakage and emissions. We are continually trying to find ways to decarbonise our operations while also decarbonising the gas that we transport. So the journey to decarbonise our gas distribution system is well underway. So Cadent own around half of the UK gas distribution infrastructure. And on our network alone, we have 44 entry connections. These entry connections, biomethane developers are injecting green, renewable gas into the network. From these 44 entry connections alone, at maximum capacity, we can heat the equivalent of 290,000 homes. And by 2033, our target is 2 million.
Sustainability means many things. Not only is it a moral responsibility to positively influence the environment, but it also has multiple social aspects that play into it.
Sustainability is a big word. We put emphasis on sustainability within our community. We like to buy local produce. We like to support our local environment with the likes of our college, where we have local school leavers coming through. So that's sustainability in one way, but also sustainability for us is a sustainable company. So sustainable company means actually sustainable pricing, but also sustainable and efficient practices that we put into place.
Sustainability, I think it's crucial. I think it's very important. Apart from the fact, it's the right thing to do. We have a responsibility to our children, to our future generations. These tend to be kind of the taglines that you hear often. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of merit to those. But personally, sustainability, it's important because for me, we're in uncharted territory. We've not been here before. We don't really know what the true outcome will be if we get past those thresholds. So the 1.5 degrees, the 2 degrees, what the scientists are telling us, they're giving us these projections, and if they're even close to being right, that it's pretty bad. Some of the headline items that I saw was if we go through these thresholds, 99% of the coral reefs will disappear. One worrying one, insects and fauna, mass habitat will disappear. Now, if you think of that, these are they're our pollinators. We're relying on these insects for the global food supply. So if we start losing these, the chain reaction could be massive. And they're so complex, these systems, we don't truly understand the end issue. And sometimes it can be too late before we realise what damage has been done. So sustainability is very important for everybody on the planet. But I do see sustainability almost as a stepping stone. I don't think we should ever treat sustainability as just the end goal, because if we are to sustain where we're at right now, sure, we're not doing any more damage, but we're not fixing anything. So the sustainability, that is definitely part of that journey, but I do believe that we should look to being regenerative. You know, sustainability is one step in the right direction, and once we become regenerative, that's when we can start to reverse these problems that we see, and that's got to be the end goal.
Sustainability to Maccaferri means trying to reduce carbon, trying to reduce the environmental impact of our products and solutions, trying to make sure that any solution we provide to our clients is greenable. Our green TerraMesh products, for instance, they produce carbon in their production and in installation, but they're intended to last 120 years. And after 70 years, they're actually sequestrating carbon, so they're actually taking carbon from the air through the green facing on it, and actually it produces a green solution within its lifetime.
From Maccaferri's perspective, we try and reduce the environmental footprint in a number of ways. We will generally start with trying to reduce the amount of material that comes from the site that has to be taken to landfill. We try and use that, what we call site one fill. We try and reuse that within the structure itself. So if we're building a reinforced soil slope, for example, we're making the ground stand steeper than it does in its natural state. The ground will want to naturally collapse down to an angle of repose that it is comfortable at. But by introducing some of our products, we can make it stand steeper, take greater loads, settle less, and so giving a soil material, much more engineering properties. And so by introducing geogrids or retaining structures from Maccaferri, we're able to, in a lot of instances, reuse those Site 1 fills with the multiple advantages of cost, reduction in carbon footprint, reduction in transportation, and so on. With some of our solutions as well, some of the traditional solutions, I should say, they would require quarried materials. Let's say gravels that you would use to form drainage elements within the ground. Drainage trenches, for example. Now, by replacing that with, let's say, a drainage geocomposite, which is a type of geosynthetic material, you can reduce dramatically the amount of gravel that you're bringing in from a quarry, yet you still have the same drainage capacity requirement on the job site. So we're replacing a mineral solution, which requires quarrying, with a geosynthetic solution. And in actual fact, let's say each metre square or each truckload of geosynthetic geocomposite drainage, you can replace 20 trucks of aggregate. So you've got a huge carbon footprint saving through the use of an intelligent manufactured and engineered product. And that's sort of where we would try and work with a customer to open their eyes to the potential new solutions that are out there. And whilst geosynthetics have been around since, they started in the 70s really, growing forward to today, we've still got a very large education exercise with our customer base and the construction industry at large, that there are many different ways of trying to replace traditional materials with something that will perform as well, but will have a lower carbon footprint. That's where we'll start with the customer, is to look at their problem and try and suggest ways that we might make it greener, faster, reusing Site 1 materials, exchanging carbon-heavy material for something else. Trying to convince the customer, whilst he or she may be completely happy with the carbon reduction, they want design life, certainty, they want technical reassurance, and that's where we can help them overcome those questions.
Producing biomethane is one of the main ways used to reduce waste. Waste is turned into biomethane, which is then injected into the UK gas network.
So the feedstock we actually use here at Minworth is sewage, which we get down from Birmingham, as well as the Black Country. So this is quite a lot of sewage that comes to Minworth site, and this is actually the largest site that we have at Severn Trent. So it's responsible for treating both Birmingham and the Black Country sewer, and that forms a feedstock for us to produce biomethane and renewable energy as well. In addition to that, we also take imports from various different smaller sites. Just being such a large site, it allows us to reduce our carbon footprint, that we're actually processing at a larger site, and we have less assets and emissions as well, as which I believe is really important. So we have not just the sewers, we have imports from other Severn Trent sites as well as other water companies, which we process here to produce biomethane through a digestion process. So the digestion process digests the sludge for around 21 days, and that as a byproduct produces biomethane, which we want to use, and then we can actually clean that biomethane and produce a renewable gas that we can inject back into the grid, and that can go to various homes to use as a renewable source of energy.
So we've got various other means of using that gas should it not be injected into the network. We have something called combined heat and power plants, which are engine-driven generators generating electricity, which can power the site, and also we have the potential to export any additional power. So we have various means of producing power at the site. And also it's important to say that it's not just here at Minworth. So we have a fleet of 5 gas-to-grid upgrading plants across the region. Also with 42 combined heat and power generators operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working very closely with people like Cadent. And we've got really good relationships built with Cadent in particular, because obviously they see what we do as a really important part of protecting the environment and the future for everybody going forward.
So biomethane is an excellent alternative to running trucks on diesel. If you look at the UK haulage sector today, we have a large number of customers. Some of the leading logistics companies in the UK are running so-called HGVs, heavy goods vehicles. These are the really large trucks, tractor and trailer combination, the one you see going up and down the motorway. These companies are under a very tight timelines often to try to decarbonise. So someone want to be 50% off diesel, or 50% have reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2025. Some want to be off fossil fuels by 2030. As of today, they've really only got 2 alternatives. One is to run on so-called biodiesel. The problem is that biodiesel is hard to come by in the quantities they need, and the price is very high. So therefore, if you then look at biomethane, biomethane offers, there's a lot of it available, so supply isn't an issue. It's also cheaper than diesel. So hence, as a haulier, you can get the best of both worlds. You can run a truck on it and save up to 80 to 90% greenhouse gas emissions compared to running a regular diesel truck, but you're also saving cost. So as such, you are in a win-win situation. The trucks are also quieter. It's about 50% quieter than a typical diesel truck, which is a huge benefit when you're running in and out of city centres, of course, and a benefit for the drivers. So biomethane as a fuel or as an energy source here in the UK has been around for the last, let's say, 15 years. But we have a lot left to go, in the sense that the sector as such is only now really starting to reach its a sensible potential when it comes to size and scale. There are still lots of waste feedstocks that could be used, and as such there isn't really a shortage of feedstocks that can be used in biomethane production. It's also a very versatile fuel, so you can use it to decarbonising heating applications. You can use it to decarbonise industrial applications, so as fuel at factories, and of course in the transport sector. We see all of those sectors using biomethane going forward. But as of today, and probably for the next 5 or 10 years, maybe a bit further out, the focus is a lot around transport. Why? Because that is, as of today, one of the hardest to decarbonise sectors, and that's where biomethane is such an elegant solution.
So the benefits of biomethane are multiple. So not only is it a renewable green gas that can directly displace the fossil fuel natural gas which is in our network, it's a waste management solution. So food waste, sewage waste, agricultural waste can be put into a digester. The microorganisms then break this organic matter down and create biogas. The biogas is upgraded into biomethane, and that is what is injected into the gas grid. It reduces our reliance on imported gas and therefore increases our energy security. Because the gas is made here in the UK, it increases UK jobs within the energy sector. It also ensures we continue to have diversity of energy supply. So biomethane isn't a new technology. We made our first connection over 10 years ago, back in 2013. We now have 44 entry connections. The processes that we now use have got easier over time to enable these connections to grow.
I think we're heading in the right direction, but there is some things we need to address. One of which I think is culture. Now, culture tends to be one of the hardest things to change. You know, naturally we don't like change, but I think there's a mindset in the industry where renewables and sustainability, you know, it's a good thing to get behind, it's a good thing to talk about, fly that flag high, but then the minute it starts hitting that bottom line in business, or maybe that household, that expendable income suddenly isn't quite there because they're getting behind doing the right thing, that's when people tend to kind of step back a little bit potentially. So I think once we collectively in industry realise that it's going to cost us something to do this, it's going to cost us. Once we accept that, you know, I think that's when we'll start seeing real progression in the industry. And these things, these costs, it might not necessarily be just monetary. Investment, you know, these are things that are required, but it could be things that cost us things like time. Or convenience. You know, we are creatures of habit. We've done things a certain way for a long time, and to suddenly just adapt and change the way we view things, the way we operate daily, that can go against the grain. So I think industry, if we can look at these things, culture and mindset, if we can overcome that, then we'll see big strides in the right direction.
I think some of the main challenges that we face in the current market is the sustainability side of things. Some of the main factors as well are, you know, cost as well. Materials have went up over the last few years considerably, which from a client perspective and from a contractor's point of view, they might have tendered for a project maybe 12 months, 18 months ago. And when the product prices back, or material prices back then were lower, and so they've won a tender on a lower material price, they then expect, obviously the client is then expected to absorb or take on the additional costs, and it's delayed a huge number of jobs for us. There was one recently down in England that got delayed purely down to the cost of the materials, or the increase in cost of the construction costs, because labours went up. Materials have went up, quarried materials have went up, so there's a massive increase in cost. That's probably one of the biggest challenges. Being more environmentally friendly and sustainable is another challenge as well, which we're all trying to face at this moment in time.
Well, in terms of environmental sustainability, I think the construction industry is coming to terms with the actual cost of being sustainable and offering sustainable solutions. I think the cost, both in terms of financial costs or limitations on what they can do, in terms of, you know, a big concrete wall to be replaced by a reinforced green slope, for instance, might mean a loss of amenity or a loss of, you know, geometry, etc., platform area, etc. So I think from that point of view, the cost, I think they're getting there though. I think everyone's starting to understand that what they can do and how they can do it is improving.
So there are some challenges with biomethane entry connections. As a gas distribution network, we need to change the way we operate our network. Traditionally, gases come in through our offtakes at high pressure and travel down the pressure tiers to reach the extremities of the network, meeting that supply as it goes. With smaller distributed entry points, we need to change the way the flow of gas throughout the network to enable the biomethane developers to inject their green renewable gas where they have the land and the feedstock. So in some instances, we need to push gas back up the pressure tiers to create that capacity. There has been much research and many studies conducted into how much biomethane can be generated here within the UK. Now, while we don't know the exact answer to this, what we do know is that we cannot meet today's gas demand with biomethane alone. We do need to look for other green gases to work alongside biomethane. Especially in our industrial clusters, we need hydrogen. We need both gases to achieve net zero.
The government has a responsibility to help companies become sustainable. Grants are one way, among others, are a place to start.
The government can help in many ways. I think that one of the main ways for me would be grants and incentives to help not only the private sector but the public sector. I think that the use of solar panels and air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, many people want to do this, but actually it is still quite expensive. I think that the private sector actually is getting quite a little bit of support, but I'm not sure whether the public sector is. I think most companies would want to do something and are doing things, but I think if there was more incentives, i.e. grants and things like that, which would make these sort of things more affordable, more companies and more people would buy into this. I think one of the big things for us at Barlows is that we're looking at installing a battery storage because we have many solar panels on the roof and we do our bit like that. But the cost of installing this is massive, and the payback is probably, with the energy costs, a long way off. You know, you may be looking at 5 or 6 years. I think that would discourage a lot of companies, if I'm honest, to do that. Whereas if there was a government, maybe 50%, or a contribution towards the green things that we do and the sustainable practices that we put in place, more people would buy into it, I think.
I think the government, to reach the goals, I think the government can do a few things. Again, it kind of, for me, goes back to this culture, this mindset, to try and change that across the nation. You know, we can be quite stuck in our ways as a nation, let alone as a species. And I think if we can get that message across to everybody, not just enterprise, but also individuals, I think the small changes that everybody makes, as well as the big changes that enterprise makes, collectively will be a massive step in the right direction. Short term, that's like an immediate win. But I think thinking outside the box, long term, we should be inculcating these core values of sustainability, responsibleness for the environment, even at a curriculum level in schools. Because if we can start moulding our younger generation with these core values, core principles, then as they grow, then they will potentially have a bit of positive peer pressure within their family unit. You know, their parents might start taking it a bit more seriously. They'll hold their parents to account. Or when businesses are after this young talent that are now entering the workplace, they will be able to hold them to account because they've got these core values imprinted. So I think if we can look at it that way and develop a strategy around that, that will help push the long-term benefits between now and 2050, not just the short term.
I think introduction of legislation, you know, from the government would definitely would help and would help you know, people buy into that part of the story, or the sustainability story. Certainly from a Maccaferri point of view, we hope that it's going to grow. We hope that there's going to be continued funding on that side of the business. You know, we hope that allowing a steady, you know, interest rates in the country will allow more houses to be built and to meet the government targets that we need for new housing or for social housing. So we certainly hope it's going to grow, and you know, we want to be part of that going forward.
As companies continue on their sustainability journeys, some questions still remain. What role will the government play in the coming years? How will the target of net zero by 2050 develop? How will future generations deal with the massive effects of climate change? Thanks to companies like the ones in today's programme, the future does indeed look positive.